Alright, so people really do seem to enjoy these videos where I do little retrospectives on comic book events that have already come and gone, where I take stock of what actually happened and how important it may or may not be for the universe as a whole. And it's fun because it's kind of a review and it's kind of a podcast and it's just kind of something you can have on in the background if you want. You don't really need to watch the screen. Which means I can just kind of put a microphone in front of myself and I don't really need to do that much editing, which is really nice for me. But oh man, let me tell you, I was putting this one off. Quite frankly, as soon as I was done reading the Dark Web event, the brand new Spider-Man story, I never wanted to think about it again. I mean, not to bury the lead too early on this one, but Dark Web was bad. Not just a bad comic event, those I'm used to by now at this point in my career. Not just a bad Spider-Man story, sadly, I've read plenty of those recently, but no, Dark Web was bad in such a specific way that it kind of laid bare all the problems with modern Spider-Man stories. And by the end, I even began to question why the hell I was even reading Amazing Spider-Man anymore, something I have not done for a long time, not since, oh, I don't know, One More Day, or even the original Clone Saga. And that should really say something, because those stories I just mentioned are two of the most famous black eyes, not just for the Spider-Man family of books, but really for all of comics in general. I did mention the Clone Saga, and perhaps it's fitting then that at the center of Dark Web is Peter Parker's famous clone, Ben Reilly. Now, when we last saw Ben, it was during the Beyond Saga of Spider-Man, an era that was really not that long ago, and I'm not afraid to say I actually quite enjoyed while it was going on, well, until the end, but we'll get there. For those who need a refresher, about a year or so ago, Peter Parker and Ben Reilly actually shared the mantle of Spider-Man for a bit. Ben had rolled back into town as the new corporately backed Spider-Man of the mega corporation known as Beyond. Beyond, of course, you would already know a fair amount about if you were a fan of Next Wave or Warren Ellis in general, as you know, he was the one who created the company and did a lot with them originally. You see, Peter, in his never-ending string of bad luck, actually forgot to copyright anything related to the name Spider-Man, so Beyond was basically able to just swoop on in and steal his iconic name and appearance right out from under him. Mainly so the company could have their own Spider-Man IP that they could own and control, and because, well, Ben figured that this would be a good chance to get paid, he swooped on in and took the job for himself. Figuring that, hey, you know what, Beyond is an evil corporation and they're going to be doing this Spider-Man thing with or without me, so they might as well do it with me, considering that, hey, I actually was Spider-Man once upon a time, and he's not a dick about any of this at all. In fact, he goes out of his way to ask for Peter's blessing to share the mantle. Not long after, Peter would end up getting grievously injured in a fight with the UFOs of all people, and he would need to take some time to recover in hospital, which I actually thought was a pretty fun and compelling way to sideline Peter for a little bit, and give readers an opportunity to actually miss him and be excited when he comes back again. I'm a big fan of professional wrestling, which storylines in comic books and wrestling share a lot of the same hallmarks, and there's an old saying that, you know, I can't miss you if you never go away, and Spider-Man is one of those characters who is always in circulation, which means you basically never get the chance to miss him. And it means that writers always need to have stories every month to fill their quotas, and it means that a lot of the time they end up retreading old ground and no one actually says anything new. With Peter down and out, Ben was the only Spider-Man patrolling New York City. Well, if you don't count Miles Morales, which, you know, you should always count Miles. Ben actually did end up crossing over with Miles, but only for like a minute. I guess Beyond's copyright shenanigans didn't extend to Brooklyn. To further sweeten the deal they had made with Ben, Beyond even managed to spring his longtime girlfriend Janine from prison. She was still doing time for killing her abusive father way back when in the comics, and this led to actually a pretty damn interesting dynamic, wherein Ben is trying to make the best of a bad situation and trying to prove his worth to the Spider-Man legacy. Meanwhile, Janine loves him and wants to be supportive of him, but knows full well that Beyond is an evil corporation, but also, hey, this is America in the 2020s. Isn't every mega corporation we work for evil at the end of the day? Is there truly any ethical Spider-Man under capitalism? You tell me. The thing about the Beyond era, too, is that it was written by a lot of different writers all at once, including Zeb Wells, who would eventually rise to the top and end up becoming the main Spider-Man writer who would be helming Dark Web. So I can't really be 100% sure what things I actually liked from the Beyond era I can attribute to Wells, or what if the stuff I liked actually belonged to other people, and at times Beyond did feel a little schizophrenic, but ultimately I just really liked the idea of Ben trying his best, trying to get out from Peter Parker's shadow, trying to make amends for past sins, and trying to be a better Spider-Man this time around his way, even though he very clearly wasn't Peter Parker. He wasn't nearly as smart as him, and he he actually had to train a lot more. Naturally, all of these different plot points come to a major head when it's revealed not only is Beyond actually super evil, no duh, not only are they the reason Peter got hurt in the first place, I mean, yeah, of course, but they were also using the clone of Dr. Kafka to try and manipulate Ben Reilly's memories to make him a more loyal pawn in their schemes. I actually thought this reveal was great at the time because clone Dr. Kafka was actually only born in the first place because of Ben Reilly's short stint as the Jackal during Dan Slott's clone conspiracy story. Though mostly as a story, Spider-Man Beyond uses that revelation as an excuse to not have to deal with what Ben was up to for the last couple of years, like joining Tony Stark's Force Works, being an anti-hero in Las Vegas, taking part in a couple other Spider-Verse stories, that sort of thing. And this is where the seeds of Dark Web really start to get planted. You see, messing with Ben's brain as much as they have is actually causing some real damage to his core memories. They're starting to break down, and soon enough, Ben will lose who he is. Well, I should say the stuff that makes him Peter, because technically they're the same person. It's a whole thing that I promise will make much more sense when you read it. Now, by the end of the Spider-Man Beyond saga, Ben starts to slowly lose his mind, and if you like me, you think, oh cool, I guess this means Peter will have a chance to get back in the saddle and actually save him, and the story will come full circle and everything. Only no, none of that happens due to a bunch of ridiculous misunderstandings and even worse characterization. You see, Ben is given this science helmet by the lady who runs Beyond, and he says that if Peter puts it on his head, then they can make some copies of those core memories. But Peter just very bluntly shoots him down, saying, oh, we can't trust this device, we can't trust this Beyond lady, I'm not going to do it. Which it's like, okay, fine, sure, this is the Marvel Universe, there's like 100 other ways you can solve this problem. Aren't you friends with like psychics and super scientists and magicians who make copies of memories all the time? The answer is of course yes, but no, we can't solve this problem in a simple manner because that means Peter and Ben wouldn't fight each other, and we gotta have the two Spider-Men fight each other even if it makes no thematic sense. Peter wins the fight, naturally, because it's his book after all, and Ben ends up falling backwards into a bunch of what I can only describe as science goo, which ends up further twisting his mind, but also his costume. And Ben Reilly ends up coming out the other side as Chasm, the hot new palette-swapped Spider-Man villain. At the time, I remember saying in one of my videos, man, that's a pretty cool new costume, a shame that it has to be connected to such a stupid story twist and such a disappointing ending to the Beyond era. I mean, why did they bother to make me as the reader actually care about Ben's trials and tribulations for like a whole year worth of stories if they were only gonna throw it all away and make him a bad guy again? And I do mean again, because they had just spent all this time walking back all the evil things he had done in Clone Conspiracy as the Jackal. Not only did they make a stupid writing decision, they made the same stupid writing decision twice. You know, this might actually be the perfect time to record this video too, because someone on Twitter had shown me that Marvel Legends is actually coming out with new figures for Ben. We have both him in his Chasm costume and in his Spider-Man Beyond suit. And honestly, in retrospect, that's what Chasm feels like to me. They had come up with the name, they came up with the design, they knew they were going to make a super cool action figure out of it, and they just threw it to Zeb Wells to put it all together into a story. And all these problems that are apparent here at the end of the Spider-Man Beyond story only become even more apparent in Dark Web. Of course, I'm talking about Ben having to lose his mind and attack Peter, which in doing so really robs him of all of his agency as a character. And that to facilitate them fighting, Peter needs to act like an unhelpful jerk too for no reason, even though there are so many ways out of this problem. And it is from that very polluted narrative ground that Zeb Wells chose to try and grow the event that was Dark Web. Yes, that's right, I've been talking for almost 9 minutes and that was all preamble. That was just stuff you needed to know before we actually started Dark Web proper, which, as we do join Dark Web, we pick up with Ben much later and we find out that he's been robbing Beyond Corp buildings in secret. Despite the fact that Peter swore he'd look for Ben, somehow this guy managed to fully give him the slip for a fair amount of time. Even though the book keeps reminding us that Ben is crazy now and he's losing his mind, Peter just cannot get a hold of this guy. The fact that the Beyond Corporation is also still around totally chaps my ass too, because there was a long-running B-plot within that Spider-Man Beyond storyline where we find out that Monica Rambeau, a former member of Next Wave, was actually working with the Daughters of the Dragon to try and bring Beyond down from the inside, only I guess they didn't succeed, even though they had all the evidence in the world by the time that story came to a close. But then again, Beyond wrapped up so abruptly, I think everyone just forgot about this side plot except for me. We also learned that Janine is still there too, having opted to to stand by her man all this time? Well, that is until she tries to run away only to almost be captured by, and again, the book doesn't do a good job explaining this, if it was a cop who is after her because she's still technically supposed to be in jail, or if it was an agent of Beyond threatening to bring her back to jail. Again, none of it's really important because it's only in the story to justify Janine deciding to turn to the dark side herself and agreeing to help Chasm get his revenge on Spider-Man for stealing his memories even though he didn't really. Also, the whole stealing from Beyond and Janine still being a wanted criminal thing is literally never brought up again for the rest of the series. The stuff with Janine actually really makes me feel sad because I genuinely loved how she was used in the Beyond story, how she was Ben's North Star, the love of his life, and here she just changes her moral alignment on a whim the second things start getting tough for her. Oh, but it doesn't stop there either, as Ben and Janine end up recruiting help from the Goblin Queen, Madelyne Pryor, who is once again the big boss of the demonic realm known as Limbo. And you're probably thinking to yourself, how the hell does Ben, this clone of Spider-Man, know who Madelyne Pryor, the clone of Jean Grey, is? Do they have like a support group or something? No, he met her in a free comic book day issue. He just happened to be walking by her one day. And yeah, I guess their clone senses tingled, so Ben and Janine just make a machine that can take them to Limbo. Yeah, that's right. I know in Beyond I said that Ben wasn't as smart as Peter. Well, apparently losing his core memories only made him smarter because he manages to build some sort of teleportation machine that gets him to Limbo. It's here too that Madelyne also gives Janine powers of her own, turning her into a brand new character called Hallows Eve, who has the power of Halloween masks. At the time and even now, I really cannot shake the feeling that Hallows Eve was some sort of delayed reaction to the minor success that DC Comics had had with their new Harley Quinn-like character, Punchline. Because again, she's a cool drawing who will probably make for cool action figures, and oh, what's that? They already announced a Hallows Eve miniseries while Dark Web was still going on. How about that? I'm sure the speculator market will go nuts for that one, much in the same way they went for Punchline, or at least that's certainly what Marvel is hoping. This leads us to the next big problem with Dark Web, and that is that if Ben and Peter left the Beyond era looking bad, let me assure you everyone leaves Dark Web looking bad, because that's the thing. Dark Web isn't just a Spider-Man story, it's a big massive Spider-Man, X-Men, Ms.Marvel, Venom crossover, because there's just too much suck to be contained in one book. We gotta spread it around, we gotta share the love. Actually, you know what, for the record, let me say this, the tie-ins to Dark Web are all infinitely superior to the main Spider-Man parts of the story. In fact, at times, it feels like those other writers are taking opportunities to dunk and clown on the main Spider-Man book for having characters act so out of character. Which should really tell you something if the only way these other writers could actually get into the spirit of writing tie-ins for Dark Web was to basically treat the whole thing as one giant joke. It communicates to me that no one actually saw any real literary or narrative worth in this story and that they were all just doing their jobs and cashing a paycheck. Which again, hey, I don't begrudge them. In fact, in many cases, they managed to make some lemonade out of lemons. I like the Ms.Marvel book let us check back in with Kamala's cast of characters who we haven't seen for a bit. I like that the X-Men tie-in built on the tension that was already building between Cyclops and Havoc over Alex being the one who saw to Madelyne Pryor's resurrection, despite the fact that everyone else thought it was a bad idea. Hell, Norman Osborn of all people in the Gold Goblin book just straight up says that he'll build a device to help share memories between Peter and Ben if it'll end this dumb conflict. He doesn't end up actually managing to do that, but shit, he zeroes in on the main problem here while Peter in his own book just kind of keeps dancing around the point and doesn't offer up a clear and obvious fix for this problem. But what exactly is Chasm's big evil plan to get his memories back, you might be asking? Well, he joins forces with the Goblin Queen in the first place to gain access to demonic fruit that kills anyone who eats it and steals their soul away, because after all, memories are stored in the soul like pee is stored in the balls. Madelyne, of course, only agrees to join Chasm's crazy crusade in the first place because she too is a clone and understands full well what it means to always be looked down by society, and she figures that if her and Chasm join forces, then they can also go after Jean Grey, even though in reality, Madelyne does most of her own heavy lifting in that X-Men tie-in, so she really didn't need Ben at all for this plan. All of these are fine ideas in theory, but they seem to only exist to justify getting the X-Men involved and allow the comic to retread a bunch of material from the much more famous Inferno storyline, with demons attacking New York City at Christmas time and possessing a series of holiday items. A lot of that demon possession stuff too is played for laughs. Zeb Wells has always been a funny kind of writer, and I don't know if he just couldn't help himself. But the tone in Dark Web is just all over the damn place, from apocalyptic end of the world drama to silly slapstick with the demons making funny noises. And it only actually gets worse too when Peter actually makes it to Limbo, but we'll get there when we get there. All of what I just said is also from only like the first issue and a half of Dark Web, so again, this is a story that started out on shaky ground and then started falling apart almost instantly. Nothing makes sense, everyone's motivation is incredibly flimsy, and everyone has to be out of character or just plain stupid for anything to actually proceed, which you never want to see. Everyone suffers from this a little bit, but Ben and Peter are by far the worst. Spider-Man stubbornly thinks that he needs to fight Ben when he starts making trouble in New York City because he's threatening the city and I can't let you do that. Even though it's very obvious all the way through that Ben is troubled, that he's losing his core memories, he's losing himself, and he's just begging for help, any sort of help. But Spider-Man just refuses to give it to him because if he does, then the story would be over. That's not to say that Ben does much better on his own. In fact, basically all the sympathy he has evaporates within minutes of him opening his mouth because he's just such a jerk for no reason, blaming Spider-Man for something that we as the reader know damn well he didn't do. That there are other ways for Ben to get his memories back. Again, like I said, any sort of psychic or magician or super scientist, so the reason that he gets so hung up on Peter is plenty annoying, but if that wasn't bad enough, for some reason Wells chooses to write Chasm as some 90s comic reject with a bunch of different try-hard tough guy lines that feel like they were fished out of some hack Hollywood writer's dumpster. Again, I don't know if Wells was actively trying to make Chasm seem funny, or if he was actually being earnest with the whole "I'm Chasm, there's a deep dark hole inside of me, something is missing." Hell, you would think at least turning evil and getting a new costume and a new set of powers would at least make Ben Reilly stronger than Peter Parker, but no, Spider-Man manages to beat Chasm very decisively during their first battle, which again completely deflates any and all drama that might have been here. And what we're left with after that is a story where the hero and the villain aren't sympathetic in the slightest, the conflict is artificial and lacks any drama from the get-go. Neither Spider-Man or Ben really change over the course of the story in any meaningful way, and we just kinda gotta take the ride until it's over. And make no mistake, Dark Web wasn't actually that long a story. In fact, it was actually pretty short, all things considered, but by God did it feel like it took a million years to be over. Now, with his first plan to get Spider-Man failing spectacularly, Ben opts to kidnap J. Jonah Jameson and Robbie Robertson in an attempt to get Peter to come away with him to Limbo for some mental torture. This takes the form of Chasm recreating Peter's soul-crushing old job at the Daily Bugle, only this time with demons. Which, you know what, this begs a ton of questions. Ben keeps saying that he lost his core memories that he shares with Peter, yet somehow he manages to remember that Peter hated his old job. A job that by this point he hasn't worked in literal years, and also really he thinks that's the worst memory to draw upon in Peter's life to try and break him mentally and force him to eat the demon fruit. Really kind of feels like Ben was just making shit up as he went along. What's weirder still is that this Limbo issue, which is by far the weirdest issue they did in this entire series, doesn't even really focus on Peter that much. We never really see how any of this is supposed to break him on a mental level, and he basically straight up tells Chasm, yeah, I'm not eating your dumb fruit, so I guess we're just gonna keep doing this forever, huh? And when the hero and villain basically admit that they're at an impasse and nothing is gonna happen, instead we get another darkly comedic detour, this time focusing on J. Jonah Jameson arguing with a bunch of the demon-possessed stuff in Limbo, as well as the introduction of Rek-Rap. Who's Rek-Rap, everybody? Well, he's Peter's #1 fan in Limbo. Peter saved this guy when he first got to Limbo, and this guy became so obsessed with him, he basically becomes the demonic Spider-Man of Limbo, who looks like a weird Ninja Turtle. And why, yes, before you have to ask, Rek-Rap is indeed Parker spelled backwards, because Rep-Rap is also kind of like Peter's own weird Bizarro. Again, by now you're probably thinking, geez, Joel, this sounds horrible. Is there anything from the book you actually did like? Yeah, McGinnis's art is actually pretty solid, especially in this issue too. Nothing interesting might have been happening, but at least it was good looking nothing. What this is really indicative of is a much bigger problem in current Spider-Man stories, and that is that Peter himself way too often becomes a background player in his own life. And the fact that this event had so little time to say or do anything with Peter, but had all the time in the world to introduce new characters like Rek-Rap and give J. Jonah Jameson his own little B-plot, just ends up saying so much in my mind. By far, though, I think the most maddening part of Dark Web for me is actually the resolution we see over in the X-Men book. In that tie-in, Jean actually has a one-on-one with Madelyne Pryor and uses her psychic powers to make copies of her own memories. In doing so, making Madelyne the evil clone not evil anymore. This means she has no reason to keep doing evil stuff with Chasm and tries to break it off with him in the main Spider-Man book, only for Ben and Janine to ultimately turn on her. This is extra stupid too because it's Hallows Eve who actually ends up managing to get one over on the Goblin Queen, which is ridiculous because she's only been a villain for like 2 weeks and Goblin Queen gave her her powers. And yet here she is beating the Goblin Queen and giving her crown over to Chasm, making him the brand new King Chasm of Limbo, complete with a brand new form. I will say though, one of the other things I actually liked, and the only other moment that I'll say is actually characters acting the way they're supposed to, is that when the going gets tough, Ben actually sends Janine away. Because, you know, deep down, even in his madness, he still very much loves her and doesn't want her to get hurt, and also because she needs to star in her own miniseries coming soon. King Chasm takes an army of demons to New York City to try and conquer it, even though, again, none of this had anything to do with Ben's motivation at the beginning of the story, and taking over New York won't get him back his memories, but screw it, we're doing it anyway because we need a big action-packed finale, and damn it, it doesn't matter how we actually get there. There's also another weird aside where Spider-Man almost turns down help from the X-Men and Madelyne herself in defeating Chasm for some dumb reason. Even though it's obvious they're gonna team up anyway, what's really crazy though is that at the end of all of this, Spider-Man doesn't even end up defeating King Chasm. No, it's Magic of the X-Men who actually delivers the final blow. Meaning that Spider-Man himself could have very easily sat out this whole Spider-Man event and very little actually would have changed in the overall story. But okay, you're probably wondering, now that Ben is defeated, what are they gonna do with him? Surely they're gonna do what Jean did for Madelyne for him, right? I mean, he wasn't in his right mind and we're heroes, we gotta do the right thing. No, actually. The book still isn't done throwing absolutely ridiculous left turns at us yet. You see, out of nowhere, Goblin Queen, who is now once again the leader of Limbo, says that she wants to open up a brand new embassy here in New York City, and that because Ben spent so much time in Limbo, he's basically a Limbo citizen now, which means that he'll face Limbo justice. Okay. What that basically means is that Ben gets himself locked up in the brand new embassy with Spider-Man coming to check on him every so often. But again, none of these heroes actually help him, and the final page is a real slap in the face with Madelyne saying that, oh yeah, I wanted to open this embassy because I wanted to extend second chances to other people like was extended to me. Even though they are very much not giving Ben a second chance, they're just going to lock him up until the next time a writer remembers he exists. Jesus Christ, this story, I tell ya. And yeah, that's the long and short of Dark Web. Did I miss some stuff here and there? Probably, but this was an event that somehow managed to be needlessly complex, totally soulless, and utterly empty all at the same time. It did nothing good for its cast of characters. In fact, in many ways, it set certain characters back years in their development. Peter looked unhelpful at best and like a total doofus at worst. Then again, I guess that is just kind of how Spider-Man is written in the main continuity these days. A perpetual child stuck in the body of a man who, even though he's been doing this for decades, for some reason can never actually call on any of that experience when it's important. Or call on any compassion for that matter either. I think that's the thing that really hurts me about this story, is just how cold and callous Spider-Man seems through most of it when he's not feeling genuinely disinterested. Then of course there's the sad case of Ben Reilly, a character who I never thought I would be taking up for because, like I said, hey, I almost quit reading Spider-Man back during the original Clone Saga. But despite that, I actually did end up drinking the Kool-Aid and beyond. I got invested in Ben's journey, I wanted to root for him, and then at the end of it all, I felt stupid for taking that ride. Hell, I think becoming Chasm actually did more damage to Ben as a character than becoming the Jackal and Clone Conspiracy ever did. At least then he was kinda able to claw his way back. And I don't know, maybe lightning will strike twice and he'll do it again. There is an interesting phenomenon in comics I've noticed. If you're a character who's down for a long period of time, you do become an underdog, and comic fans and readers sure do love an underdog as much as they love a redemption story. The other thing that really killed Dark Web as a story too is that it couldn't have come at a worse possible time. No one wanted to see the further adventures of Chasm and his battle with Peter. No, they wanted the long overdue answers to why exactly Peter and MJ seemingly broke up in the missing 6 months between the beginning of the Zeb Wells series and the end of the Nick Spencer run. A big burning question that's actually only getting answered right now, but of course that's a story for another day completely. In summation, what happened in Dark Web? Not much at all. It was a bad story told for weak reasons that made all the characters involved look worse if only for their involvement. But hey, at least they got some action figures out of the deal, and at the end of the day, isn't that the most important thing? Until we meet again again, everyone, this has been Cape Joel. Be sure to join me next time when I will once again be asking the question, what just happened?